You've probably tried to break a bad habit at least once in your life. Maybe it was biting your nails, doom scrolling at 2 a.m., procrastinating until the last minute, or constantly checking your phone even when you promised yourself you wouldn't. You tell yourself, "This time I'm done." But a few days later, you're right back where you started. And every time it happens, you wonder if there's something wrong with you, something weak, something undisciplined, something broken. But here's the truth. Your struggle was never about willpower. It was never about being weak or lacking discipline. Your brain is literally designed to hold on to habits, especially the bad ones, and once you understand why, you finally get the power to override it. So let's start with a simple idea. Your brain's job is not to make you happy, it's to make you efficient. Your brain wants to save energy, reduce thinking, and automate as much as possible. Every time you repeat a behavior, your brain takes notes. It asks, "Is this something I'll need to do again?" And if the answer seems to be yes, because you do it repeatedly, it stores that behavior in the basal ganglia, the part of your brain responsible for habit formation. Think of it like your brain's automation center. Once a habit enters this system, it becomes incredibly easy to repeat and incredibly difficult to break. Not because you want it, but because your brain wants to run on autopilot. And here's where the trap begins. Every habit, good or bad, follows the same loop. Cue, routine, reward. Something triggers your brain. You respond with an automatic action, and you get some kind of reward, sometimes emotional, sometimes chemical, sometimes both. Maybe the cue is stress. The routine is grabbing your phone. The reward is a tiny hit of dopamine from seeing notifications. Or the cue is boredom. The routine is opening the fridge. The reward is the momentary pleasure of a snack. Over time, the cue becomes glued to the routine. That's why breaking bad habits feels like fighting gravity. The entire loop hides beneath awareness, operating in the shadows. Most people try to break habits by attacking the routine directly. They try to stop drinking soda, stop procrastinating, stop scrolling, stop overeating. But when the cue still exists, and the reward still exists, your brain eventually drags you right back. This is why willpower doesn't work. Willpower is like trying to hold back a river with your bare hands. You can resist for a moment, but eventually, the water overpowers you. Real change happens when you target the loop, not the routine. The tricky part is how long habits take to replace. People love repeating that old myth. It takes 21 days to form a habit. But research paints a completely different picture. It can take 18 days, or it can take 254 days. Most people fall somewhere around 66. Your brain's pathways physically rewire themselves over time, and those pathways, once built, don't just disappear. Even years later, the old habit still exists like a dormant program. You can overwrite it, you can weaken it, but you can't erase it entirely. That's why people who used to smoke may suddenly crave a cigarette after years of quitting. It's not because they failed, it's because their brain remembers. To break the loop, you start with awareness. You identify the cue. You figure out what triggers the behavior. Most people skip this step, and that's why they stay stuck. Let's say you constantly binge-watch shows late at night. The cue might be loneliness. It might be stressful. It might be fatigue. It might be the moment you lie down in bed. Once you understand the cue, you can target it directly. You can change your environment, shift your routine, or prepare an alternative response. The key is replacing the routine, not eliminating it. Your brain still wants the reward, and if you take that reward away completely, your brain will fight back. Imagine your reward is relaxation. Instead of doom scrolling, you might switch to reading for 5 minutes. Instead of junk food, maybe a walk outside. Instead of procrastination, maybe starting a timer for just 1 minute. By keeping the reward intact, your brain doesn't feel punished. It feels redirected. And that small shift is enough to begin rewiring your neural pathways. But here's something most people never consider. Bad habits don't survive because you're weak. They survive because they work. They give you something: relief, escape, pleasure, comfort, control, stimulation. Your goal is not to destroy that need, it's to satisfy it in a healthier way. If you don't replace it, your brain will cling to whatever worked before. Another reason habits stick is dopamine. Dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure, it's the chemical of expectation. It fires before the reward, not after. When your brain predicts a positive outcome, dopamine spikes. That's why just thinking about checking your phone gives you a little thrill. That's why anticipating junk food feels almost as good as eating it. That's why habits become emotional shortcuts. Your brain experiences cravings before the action even happens. This means that breaking a habit requires you to interrupt the prediction. You have to delay the reward long enough to retrain the expectation. And delaying doesn't mean denying. If you delay something for even 10 minutes, you change the chemistry of the craving. Cravings are like waves. They rise, peak, then fall. Most cravings last 90 seconds. People who understand this become masters of their own behavior. They allow the craving to come and go without acting on it. They surf the urge instead of drowning in it. So let's walk through a system that actually works. First, identify the cue. Write down the exact moment the behavior happens. What time of day? What emotional state? What location? What people are present? The clearer the cue, the easier the next step becomes. Second, replace the routine. Don't focus on stopping the habit. Focus on swapping it. If you always eat snacks after dinner, maybe swap them with tea. If you scroll your phone first thing in the morning, maybe place your phone across the room. If you procrastinate on work, maybe use a 1-minute action rule. It sounds small, almost too small, but your brain loves small. Third, keep the reward. If your reward from scrolling was dopamine from novelty, replace it with something stimulating but healthier, like learning something quick or reading a page of an interesting book. If the reward was comfort, replace it with a comfort ritual. Fourth, start small. Your brain resists massive change. It interprets big changes as threats. Small changes slip under the radar. Fifth, track consistency. Habits grow stronger through repetition, not intensity. A single skipped day won't ruin you. Missing multiple days resets momentum. Tracking keeps you accountable and turns your new habit into a chain you don't want to break. Now imagine someone who struggles with procrastination. Their cue might be feeling overwhelmed. Their routine is avoidance. Their reward is temporary relief. To break this loop, they don't need more discipline. They need a smaller entry point. Something like working for 1 minute, then stopping. This sounds too easy, almost silly, but it works because it changes the emotional association. The brain stops perceiving the task as a threat. Over time, 1 minute becomes 2, then 5, then 10. The key is making the habit so small you can't say no. Let's consider another example. Someone who wants to quit phone addiction. The cue might be boredom. The routine is picking up the phone. The reward is instant dopamine. In this case, the solution is not locking the phone in another room. Your brain will always find a way around extreme restrictions. The solution is creating friction. Move distracting apps off your home screen. Increase the number of steps needed to open them. Reduce notifications. Set phone-free zones like your bedroom or dining table. Each tiny barrier gives your brain time to interrupt the automatic behavior. Breaking bad habits also requires understanding emotional triggers. Many habits aren't physical, they're emotional coping mechanisms. Stress often leads to overeating. Loneliness leads to scrolling social media. Exhaustion leads to binge watching. Anxiety leads to fidgeting or nail biting. When the emotional cause remains untreated, the habit becomes a crutch. You're not fighting the habit, you're fighting the emotion behind it. The most powerful habit breakers are people who learn to sit with negative emotions without immediately seeking escape. When you stop running from the feeling, the habit loses its power. This brings us to self-identity. The strongest habits are identity-based. When someone says, "I'm trying to quit smoking," the identity is still tied to smoking. When someone says, "I'm not a smoker," the identity shifts. Your brain always works to stay consistent with your self-image. If your identity is, "I'm a person who exercises," working out becomes automatic. If your identity is, "I'm always late," your behavior will match it. Changing identity is slow, but powerful. Every small action becomes a vote for the person you want to become. And eventually, the identity becomes real. And now we get into something deeper: your environment. People underestimate how much their surroundings dictate their habits. If your phone is next to you, you'll use it. If junk food is in your kitchen, you'll eat it. If your bed is too comfortable, you'll snooze your alarms. Changing your environment is often more effective than changing your mind. Put your phone in another room. Remove snacks from your house. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Create a workspace that feels inviting. The environment shapes behavior effortlessly, without relying on willpower. Another mistake people make is attempting to break multiple habits at once. That drains mental energy and increases failure rates. Focus on one habit until it's stable, then move to the next. People who layer habits one at a time build long-term change. People who try to change everything at once burn out. Lasting transformation is slow. It's quiet. It looks boring. But it works. Now let's describe the moment change begins. It's when you stop expecting overnight results. Most people quit because progress feels invisible at first. Nothing seems different. The brain rewires in the background long before you notice change in the foreground. The reward of consistency is delayed, but it's worth it. Over time, the new habit becomes easier than the old one. That's when the magic happens. That's when you realize you're no longer forcing it, you're simply living it. To make all of this real, imagine you're someone who struggles with nighttime overeating. Your evenings are a mix of stress and boredom, and the kitchen becomes a place of comfort. You know it's a bad habit, but your brain associates it with relaxation. So instead of trying to quit cold turkey, you change the cue. Maybe you start brushing your teeth right after dinner. Nobody likes eating after brushing. Or you replace the routine. Instead of opening the fridge, you brew herbal tea. Or you keep the reward. After resisting the urge, you let yourself watch one episode of your favorite show guilt-free. Over a few weeks, the craving weakens. The loop breaks. And you never needed willpower. You needed strategy. And here's the part nobody talks about. The battle with a bad habit doesn't happen at the moment of action, it happens in the 5 seconds before it. That tiny gap, the pause between impulse and behavior, that is where your entire life actually changes. Most people don't even realize this gap exists because the habit loop fires so quickly. The cue appears, dopamine spikes, the body moves, and the mind follows afterward, rationalizing the behavior you've already done. But when you learn to widen that gap, even by one breath, 1 second of awareness, you disrupt the autopilot. That disruption is the key to transformation. Think about how many times you've acted before noticing what you were doing. You open your phone without remembering picking it up. You snack while watching a show, and suddenly the whole packet is empty. You say you'll exercise in 5 minutes, and suddenly it's midnight. None of this happens consciously. Your brain slips into a pre-recorded pattern. Scientists call this automaticity. It's the moment when a behavior becomes so deeply ingrained that it requires almost zero effort to activate. This is why habits are powerful and dangerous. Once a routine becomes automatic, your conscious brain barely participates. You're not choosing anymore. You're replaying. So the question becomes, how do you interrupt a pattern that fires before you even notice it? The answer is presence. Not in a spiritual sense, but in a neurological one. When you bring conscious awareness into the moment, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain responsible for decision-making. This region is like the brakes on a car. Habits are like the accelerator. If your brakes are weak, the habit wins. If your brakes get strong, the habit weakens. One of the fastest ways to strengthen this braking system is through micropauses. Every time you notice an urge rising, count down from 5 slowly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. During that short countdown, your brain shifts from autopilot to awareness. And in that awareness, you suddenly regain control long enough to choose a different action. And this brings us to something even more important: emotional cravings. Almost every bad habit is emotionally driven. The emotion comes first: loneliness, stress, anxiety, boredom, fatigue, and the habit becomes your brain's attempt to self-soothe. This is why removing a habit without addressing the emotion rarely works. If you take away the coping mechanism but not the feeling underneath it, the habit will come back or transform into a different bad habit. You might quit smoking, but start overeating. You might stop overeating, but start endlessly scrolling. Your brain isn't addicted to the habit itself. It's addicted to what the habit protects you from feeling. Behavioral economists call this choice architecture. You create an environment where the default behavior supports your goals instead of sabotaging them. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow every night. Want to drink more water? Keep a bottle on your desk. Want to limit screen time? Make your phone grayscale and hide distracting apps. The easier you make the new habit, the faster your brain rewires. The beauty is that the environment works even when motivation fails. The real breakthrough comes when you realize your brain is not your enemy. It's simply following the pathways it built. When you change the pathway, you change the behavior. And the moment you change your behavior, you begin changing your life. If you've tried to quit before and failed, that wasn't failure. It was your brain doing exactly what it was programmed to do. Now you get to reprogram it. Now you know the loop. Now you know chemistry. Now you know the system. And once you understand the system, nothing can stop you from building the life you actually want.